Greetings and welcome back to the Island of Patmos, a study of Revelation. Today we'll be discussing Part 7, the Turks. All Bible verses are taken from the New King James Version, unless otherwise indicated. Let's start with the sixth trumpet. Revelation chapter 9, verses 13 and 14. Then the sixth angel sounded, and I heard a voice from the four horns of the golden altar, which is before God, saying to the sixth angel who had the trumpet, Release the four angels who are bound at the great river Euphrates. We'll begin with the history of the Turks. In the 10th century, a warlord known as Seljuk from the Turkic Agas tribes had a falling out with the supreme chieftain of the Agas and established the Seljuk dynasty. Around 985, Seljuk converted to Islam. In the 11th century, the Seljuks migrated from their ancestral homeland into mainland Persia, where they encountered the Ghaznavids, which were a Persianate Muslim dynasty of Turkic Mamluk origin. At the Battle of Nassa Plains in 1035, the Seljuks, now led by Seljuk's grandsons, Shagri and Togrul, defeated the Ghaznavid dynasty. Shortly after this, in 1037, the great Seljuk Empire was founded. In 1055, Togrul Beg, who became the first military leader of the great Seljuk Empire, conquered Baghdad. The Caliph of Baghdad, Al-Qaim, was forced to grant him the title of Sultan and then that of King of the East and West. Then in the following year, 1056, Togrul led his troops across the Euphrates River into the lands of the remaining emperors of the Roman Empire. Thus the Turks were no longer bound by the Euphrates River. On April 27, 1062, Togrul Beg married the daughter of the Caliph Al-Qaim and became the supreme leader of Islam. This united the great Seljuk Empire with the Arab Empire based in Baghdad. Thus, the great Seljuk Empire was now a high medieval, Turco-Persian, Sunni Muslim empire. Togrul Beg died that same year. He did not have any children. Back to the sixth trumpet. Revelation chapter 9, verse 15. So the four angels, who had been prepared for the hour and day and month and year, were released to kill a third of mankind. We will apply the day for a year principle, according to Ezekiel chapter 4, verse 6. And when you have completed them, lie again on your right side. Then you shall bear the iniquity of the house of Judah 40 days. I have laid on you a day for each year. Let's determine how long the year, month, hour, and day will be. The first theory implies that 1 year equals 365 days. There are two resources for this theory: The Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire by Edward Gibson and The Outline of History by H.G. Wells, who is also the author of the book War of the Worlds. Here is a breakdown for this time frame. 1 year equals 365 days, which equals 365 years. 1 month equals 365 divided by 12, which equals 30.4 days, which equals 30.4 years. 1 day equals 1 year. An hour is a part of a year, for a total of 365 plus 30.4 plus 1 plus a part of a year equals 396 to 397 years. Let's start in the year 1056, when Togrul Beg led his troops across the Euphrates River. When we add 397 to 1056, we arrive at 1453. Togrul Beg was succeeded by Alp Arslan, the son of Shagri, who was referred to as the Valiant Lion. Alp Arslan, at the head of the Turkish cavalry in 1062, set out from Baghdad and crossed the Euphrates River. Alp Arslan waged a holy war against Greek Christendom, which by this time had once again become idolatrous, because Irene, the empress of the Byzantine Empire, had declared idols lawful. By the 9th century, idolatry had reigned supreme. By 1091, the great Seljuk Empire controlled everything from the Euphrates to the Nile and everything within 100 miles of Constantinople, which was the headquarters of the Eastern Roman Empire. The emperor in Constantinople appealed to the Pope for help. What followed was the Pope calling for the Crusades to liberate the Holy Lands from the Seljuks. There is another theory that implies that 1 year equals 360 days. Here is the time frame for that theory. 1 year equals 360 days, which equals 360 years. 1 month equals 30 days, which equals 30 years. 1 day equals 1 year. An hour equals approximately 2 months. Some sources say 2 weeks. For a total of 360 plus 30 plus 1 plus 2 months, which equals just over 391 years. Let's start in the year 1062 AD, when Alp Arslan crossed the Euphrates River to wage a holy war. When we add 391 to 1062, we again arrive at 1453. So 2 different theories, 2 different men, and 2 different starting dates. What they have in common, however, is that they both cross the Euphrates River, which begins the timeline. Both theories end in 1453. So what happened in 1453? On to the Ottoman Empire. Around 1290, Osman, a Muslim warrior and leader of a small principality inside Seljuk Turk territory, declared his independence from the Seljuk Sultan and formed the Ottoman Empire. Ottoman is derived from Uthman, which is the Arabic form of Osman. Osman and his son Orhan began expanding their lands northwest into Byzantine Empire territory and east into Anatolia. Anatolia, also referred to as Asia Minor, was located in modern-day Turkey. On May 29, 1453, the Ottoman Empire captured the prized capital city of Constantinople. The conquest of Constantinople and the fall of the Byzantine Empire was a landmark of the late Middle Ages, marking the end of the Roman Empire, which began roughly in 27 BC and had lasted for nearly 1,500 years. This was God's vengeance against the Roman Empire, because Satan had empowered them to kill millions of Christians in his attempt to wipe out Christianity. The Ottoman Empire is known today for being one of the greatest empires of the modern world, but it was perhaps more important for becoming a great Islamic caliphate. Back to the sixth trumpet, Revelation chapter 9, verse 16, from the New King James Version. Now the number of the army of the horsemen was 200 million. I heard the number of them. 200 million is the number of the horsemen. However, this number has been recorded in different ways. Let's look at some other versions. Revelation chapter 9, verse 16, from the King James Version. And the number of the army of the horsemen were 200,000,000, and I heard the number of them. 200,000,000 equals 200,000 times 1,000, which again equals 200 million. Revelation chapter 9, verse 16, from the New International Version. The number of the mounted troops was twice 10,000 times 10,000. I heard their number. Twice 10,000 times 10,000 equals 2 times 10,000 times 10,000, which again equals 200 million. Revelation chapter 9, verse 16, from Young's Literal Translation. And the number of the forces of the horsemen is 2 myriads of myriads, and I heard the number of them. 2 myriads of myriads. Young's Literal Translation was published in 1862. It was written over a period of 20 years by Robert Young from Scotland. It's a very highly accurate translation. The focus of this translation is on sticking as close as possible to the earliest copies of the original manuscripts. So what is a myriad? A myriad is a Greek word. It means a great multitude or units of 10,000. Since John said that he heard the number of them, it would seem reasonable to believe that he heard the number 10,000. Notice that it doesn't say 2 myriads times myriads. That would equal 20,000 times 10,000, which is again 200 million. It says 2 myriads of myriads. This would be interpreted as a great multitude in units of 10,000. What's interesting is that the Turks organized their armies in units of 10,000. A tumen was a unit of measurement used by the Turkic and Mongol people to quantify and organize their societies in groups of 10,000, similar to the ancient Greek word myriad. A tumen denotes a tribal unit of 10,000 households, or a military unit of 10,000 soldiers. It has been estimated by modern historians that the Ottoman army numbered 60 to 80,000 men during the siege of Constantinople in 1453, thus myriads of myriads. Revelation chapter 9, verse 17. And thus I saw the horses in the vision. Those who sat on them had breastplates of fiery red, hyacinth blue, and sulfur yellow, and the heads of the horses were like the heads of lions, and out of their mouths came fire, smoke, and brimstone. The Turks' uniforms were red, blue, and yellow. Alp Arslan was known as the valiant lion. Others had names like the brave lion and the heroic lion. They were known for their ferocity, even more than the Arabs. The Turkish tribes carried a horse-like tail instead of banners as they rode into battle. They wore them on their fezes hats. The more horsetails you had, the more important you were. The city of Constantinople was the capital of the Eastern Roman Empire, also known as the Byzantine Empire, for well over 1,000 years. Although the city suffered many attacks, prolonged sieges, internal rebellions, and crusaders, its legendary defenses were the most formidable in both the ancient and medieval worlds. Besides their secret weapon of Greek fire, their massive Theodosian walls were basically indestructible. The Theodosian walls consisted of an outer wall beyond the moat, a second wall with regular towers for firing at their enemy, and a third inner wall with towers to hold their artillery machines. These walls, however, could not resist the mighty cannons of the Ottoman Empire. Revelation chapter 9, verses 18 and 19. For their power is in their mouth and in their tails. For their tails are like serpents having heads, and with them they do harm. By these 3 plagues a third of mankind was killed, by the fire and the smoke and the brimstone, which came out of their mouths. The largest of the cannons of the Ottoman Empire was 30 feet long, with a gaping mouth of 3 feet across. This could fire a ball weighing 1,100 pounds over 1 mile. So massive was this cannon that it took an awfully long time to load and cool, and so could only be fired 7 times a day. Still, the Ottomans had plenty of smaller cannons, each capable of firing over 100 times a day. Some of these cannons were cast into the form of lions. Brimstone is basically sulfur, which is the explosive component of gunpowder. So the fire, smoke, and brimstone are referring to the artillery and gunpowder used by the Ottomans. They lit the fuse at the tail of the cannon to ignite the gunpowder, which produced the power to propel the balls from the mouth of the cannon. They surrounded Constantinople, and by cannon fire the city walls fell. This was the first recorded time that a city fell due to superior artillery. After this, the city of Constantinople was repopulated from people with a multitude of backgrounds and faiths, and thus became a multicultural empire. For Christendom, the siege of Constantinople in 1453 represented a serious shift in its dealings with the East. Now devoid of both a long-standing buffer against the Ottomans and their access to the Black Sea, Christian kingdoms relied on Hungary to halt any further westward expansion. Many modern scholars also agree that the exodus of Greeks to Italy as a result of this event marked the end of the Middle Ages and the beginning of the Renaissance. Revelation chapter 9, verses 20 and 21. But the rest of mankind who were not killed by these plagues did not repent of the works of their hands, that they should not worship demons and idols of gold, silver, brass, stone, and wood, which can neither see nor hear nor walk. And they did not repent of their murders, or their sorceries, or their sexual immorality, or their thefts. So now we're going to determine who these individuals were worshiping. Here's what we know. They worship demons. They worship idols of gold, silver, brass, stone, and wood, and their idols can't see or hear or walk. Now let's go back to Babylon. As you may recall from part 2, the Jewish diaspora, Daniel was taken captive when Nebuchadnezzar was the king of Babylon. The next king was Nabonidus, who was the son-in-law of Nebuchadnezzar. When Nabonidus had to flee for his life, his son Belshazzar ruled as the crown prince. Now on to the story of Belshazzar's feast. Daniel 5, verses 1 to 4. Belshazzar the king made a great feast for 1,000 of his lords, and drank wine in the presence of the thousands. While he tasted the wine, Belshazzar gave the command to bring the gold and silver vessels which his father Nebuchadnezzar had taken from the temple which had been in Jerusalem, that the king and his lords, his wives, and his concubines might drink from them. Then they brought the gold vessels which had been taken from the temple of the house of God, which had been in Jerusalem, and the king and his lords, his wives, and his concubines drank from them. They drank wine, and praised the gods of gold and silver, bronze and iron, wood and stone. Notice the similarities between the idols. In the sixth trumpet, the idols are of gold, silver, brass, stone, and wood. In Babylon, the idols are of gold, silver, bronze, iron, wood, and stone. Brass and bronze both have copper and zinc elements in them. The difference is the amounts of copper and zinc that they have. Brass is made up of 60 to 80% copper and 20 to 40% zinc. Bronze is made up of 80 to 90% copper and 10 to 20% zinc. Brass and bronze are comparable. Iron is listed as an idol in Babylon, but is not listed in the sixth trumpet. Overall, I believe these are referring to the same idols. This is what Daniel had to say to Belshazzar. Daniel chapter 5, verses 22 to 23. But you, his son, Belshazzar, have not humbled your heart, although you knew all this, and you have lifted yourself up against the Lord of heaven. They have brought the vessels of his house before you and your lords, your wives and your concubines, have drunk wine from them, and you have praised the gods of silver and gold, bronze and iron, wood and stone, which do not see or hear or know, and the God who holds your breath in his hand and owns all your ways you have not glorified. Again, note the similarities. In the sixth trumpet, the idols can't see or hear or walk. In Babylon, the idols can't see or hear or know. So it would appear that the demons and idols that are worshipped in Babylon during the reign of Belshazzar are the same demons and idols being worshipped in Constantinople in 1453 during the sixth trumpet. Now on with the story. Daniel chapter 5, verse 5. In the same hour the fingers of a man's hand appeared and wrote opposite the lampstand on the plaster of the wall of the king's palace. And the king saw the part of the hand that wrote. When Belshazzar saw this, he became very frightened. He summoned his wise men to figure out the message that was written on the wall. The wise men were not able to figure out what was happening. So the queen summoned Daniel, because she remembered how he had helped Nebuchadnezzar with his troubling dreams and visions many years ago. Daniel interpreted the inscription, "Many, many, Tekel Parsin," which basically meant that God had numbered Belshazzar's days and that the kingdom was going to be overrun by the Persians. Daniel was right. Daniel chapter 5, verses 30 and 31. That very night Belshazzar, king of the Chaldeans, was slain, and Darius the Mede received the kingdom, being about 62 years old. Darius the Mede, the king of Persia, conquered Babylon. The expression, "the handwriting is on the wall," comes from this story. The name Belshazzar means Bel, protect the king. Bel was the false god worshipped by the Babylonians. Bel is a demonic spirit. Bel is Aramaic and Baal is Hebrew. They are both mentioned in the Bible and are the same demonic spirit. During the fall of Babylon to the Persians in 538 to 539 BC, Bel also took a fall. Let's look at some verses from the Bible that describe the fall of Bel. Jeremiah chapter 50, verses 1 to 3. The word that the Lord spoke against Babylon and against the land of the Chaldeans by Jeremiah the prophet. Declare among the nations, proclaim, and set up a standard. Proclaim, do not conceal it. Say, Babylon is taken, Bel is shamed, Merodach is broken in pieces. Her idols are humiliated, her images are broken in pieces. For out of the north a nation comes up against her, which shall make her land desolate, and no one shall dwell therein. They shall move, they shall depart, both man and beast. The beast here is referring to Bel. Jeremiah chapter 51, verse 44. I will punish Bel in Babylon, and I will bring out of his mouth what he has swallowed, and the nations shall not stream to him any more. Yes, the wall of Babylon shall fall. So when Babylon fell, Bel was punished. How was he punished? Isaiah chapter 46, verses 1 and 2. Bel bows down, Nebo stoops. Their idols were on the beasts and on the cattle. Your carriages were heavily loaded, a burden to the weary beast. They stoop, they bow down together. They could not deliver the burden, but have themselves gone into captivity. Jeremiah chapter 51, verses 41 and 42. Oh, how Shishak is taken! Oh, how the praise of the whole earth is seized! How Babylon has become desolate among the nations! The sea has come up over Babylon. She is covered with a multitude of its waves. Shishak is the equivalent of Babylon, according to a secret mode of writing practiced among the Jews. In the Bible, the abyss is a deep or boundless place. In Hebrew, abyss translates to whom refers to the great deep of the primordial waters of chaos, out of which the world was created. This term could also refer literally to the depths of the sea or the deep sea. So when the sea came up over Babylon, this could indicate that Bel was taken into the deep sea. This would suggest that Bel was sent to the abyss after the fall of Babylon in 538 to 539 BC. In order for Bel to be worshipped during the time of the siege of Constantinople in 1453, he had to have been released from the abyss during the time of Mohammed. Let's review the sixth trumpet. Revelation chapter 9, verses 13 to 16. Then the sixth angel sounded, and I heard a voice from the four horns of the golden altar which is before God, saying to the sixth angel who had the trumpet, Release the four angels who are bound at the great river Euphrates. So the four angels, who had been prepared for the hour and day and month and year, were released to kill a third of mankind. Now the number of the army of the horsemen was 2 myriads of myriads. I heard the number of them. Revelation chapter 9, verses 17 to 19. And thus I saw the horses in the vision. Those who sat on them had breastplates of fiery red, hyacinth blue, and sulfur yellow. and the heads of the horses were like the heads of lions, and out of their mouths came fire, smoke, and brimstone. By these 3 plagues a third of mankind was killed, by the fire and the smoke and the brimstone which came out of their mouths. For their power is in their mouth and in their tails. For their tails are like serpents, having heads, and with them they do harm. Revelation chapter 9, verses 20 to 21. But the rest of mankind who were not killed by these plagues did not repent of the works of their hands, that they should not worship demons and idols of gold, silver, brass, stone, and wood, which can neither see nor hear nor walk. And they did not repent of their murders or their sorceries or their sexual immorality or their thefts. Thus ends the 6th trumpet, but the 2nd woe isn't over yet. Thank you for attending today's Bible study, The Turks. Stay tuned for Part 8, Angels in the Midst, in this series Back to the Island of Patmos. God bless.